Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today I am the guest. This is out of my comfort zone, out of my wheelhouse. My husband and I had this idea. He interviews me about my story, where I've been, where I'm going, what's going on. It's raw, it's uncut, it's vulnerable, there's tears. I didn't expect it to go as deep as it did, and I didn't expect actually to have the feelings that came up to come up in the podcast. And so it's me in my most raw form. So I hope you'll enjoy this podcast. And please, if you do, take a moment to drop a comment. I have these listeners out there on the audio platform, on YouTube. They keep coming in, but I don't know who you are. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, who you are, what you're enjoying, what you would like to see more of, what lights you up. And so share that with me, interact. I would love for this to be a little bit more interactive between us. And either way, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Good morning, Adam. Welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to do something different that's a little bit out of my comfort zone for sure. But we were coming up with some ideas and thought maybe the audience would want to know a little bit about me. I'm not great at actually talking to myself and creating content in that way. I'm better at responding. And so we're just going to try this and see how it lands.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I'm Nicky's husband. So I do have an inside scoop. We talked about maybe me interviewing her as a way to kind of talk about what she's up to and what this podcast is about, and getting her to just sort of explore and share more about her story. And so I have not prepared her with any questions. She does better just responding in the moment. And I think we probably end up talking about that a little bit in her podcast, is that she doesn't really write questions out for her guests. She's very kind of in the moment and spontaneous. And so in the spirit of that, we're going to do the same thing here. So
because I was asking, like, what are you going to ask me? And you said, I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
So let's start off. Why did you start this podcast? What was the impetus behind wanting to do this?
I just had this desire to find a way to express myself. And it took me 3 years, you know that, because I thought about it and I talked about it for 3 years and I just really didn't have the courage to launch it. And I definitely just wanted to do audio only. And so finally, when I came to terms with the fact that I could do audio only and not be on camera, I made the jump and was like, okay, I'm going to do the podcast. And then shortly after that, I was talking to one of my friends, and she really kind of pushed the fact that I need to do video, that video content's where it's at. And I'd already made that like initial push for the commitment for the podcast. And so I went ahead and put myself out there. And I felt like there was going to be a lot of judgment, or there was this fear of what people might think. And I just kind of got over that and put this content out. And really the whole point behind it is I'm not the expert. I'm bringing experts on. I want to hear their perspective and their story. And then kind of putting that information out to the world through me, because I like digging. I like digging and asking questions and getting to the bottom of things. And so I thought that I could get some interesting content out there in the world.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in 1 second. How did you land on the name Connected Community?
That's a great question. Everything I do is about community these days, about pulling people together and getting resources. And one day I wanted to have this platform where if people want to talk about grief, that we can do a group and everyone can just kind of gather. And so if the podcast has that topic, then we can gather people that are interested in that topic and really dive deep and explore, and have a container where that only runs, say, 10 or 12 weeks. But everything I do, I think, is in the spirit of community in my life. And I love connecting with other people and connecting people with each other. And so I think that that's where it came from. And at the end of the day, we're all connected. Like we all have the same issues and the same struggles and the same pains, and we're all so similar.
Mm, I love that. So okay, how do you decide who you're gonna interview? Like what topics you're gonna discuss, things that you're
Uh,
gonna bring up? Because I
yeah,
feel like I noticed this, and this is your husband. I noticed that you go through these like periods where you're interested in a certain thing and then you start reaching out to learn more. You're like, oh, I'm gonna have a guest on my show that's about this thing. And it's almost kind of like a mirror of your own individual process and journey. And I think it's really cool to watch. I don't know if that's landing with you
yeah,
or not, if that's
yeah, that totally lands. I think I get really excited about something and I want to know more. And then this podcast is a great platform where I can't get the information I'm wanting and I have so many questions. And so I get to have somebody come on that's an expert and I can ask all these questions too. And so it is a reflection of what's going on in my life. And so in the beginning, it was just, let's find some interesting people to talk to and hear their story. And it was amazing just connecting with seemingly ordinary people that had extraordinary stories. And then I would get into body things, and then it was all plant medicine. And now I'm diving into the therapeutic world, and and I want to interview all of these therapists. And so it is selfishly what I'm interested at the moment. Um, and if my listeners could tell me what they're interested in, then I could do some more content on those topics that maybe I haven't covered. But yeah, it's a windy path.
yeah. We've talked about this a lot, and I think you've always kind of wondered like who your audience is. Um,
Hmm.
can you speak to that? Like, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? Because in some ways, I feel like you are your audience. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering like how you feel about that, or what your thoughts are on who it is you're reaching.
Yeah. I would love to know who my audience is. I have I have this growing audience on YouTube and on the audio
Mm,
platforms, and it's growing, and then but I'm not getting a ton of engagement, although I'm not really great at like asking for engagement. And so I don't know who my audience is. I'll have people that I know that are listening to the podcast that are really engaged, and every once in a while somebody will drop a comment. But I'm assuming that the audience is pretty similar to me, where we're just diving into this path of like self healing and exploration, and so I imagine my audience is on this path towards finding truth for themselves, and that could be in the beginning of the path, or like they could have been doing it for a really long time. And my topics are kind of, some of them are out there and some of them aren't. And seems like the plant medicine topics are getting a lot of traction. And so I'm guessing that my audience is a little bit out of the box in the way that they think, and that they're pretty open minded, and that they are on their path of healing, whatever that might look like for them.
yeah, so you said something in that I think is really interesting. It, people who are on their path to their own truth, their inner truth. And so I want to talk about what your path has been and what your journey has been to find that for yourself, because I feel like you had a really interesting journey. I don't think a lot of people probably know your story. It'd be fun to kind of share that with the audience and talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit.
I don't even know where to start or like how far to go back. To be completely honest, I feel like I've lived so many different lives, and so many, like every decade feels like a completely different chapter and a completely different me. But I would say that back before I met you, which was 18 years ago, I had
Mm,
been in a marriage that was really unfulfilling. Um, and I was a social worker, and I was finding that pretty unfulfilling at the time as well. And I felt like I was caught in this system where people were forced to receive my services. So they
mm,
weren't coming to me because they wanted help, but they were coming to me because the system was forcing them into that. And so it was working with, I mean, I loved my job. So don't get me wrong. Like I learned so much and I took so much away. But it was a hospice social worker, and then I worked on the Native American reservation as a dialysis social worker, and I worked with kids that were in foster care and group homes, and I worked with homeless youth 18 to 21, and I had all these, and I would get really involved in that work, and then after 2 or 3 years, like I think it's just my curiosity piece. I would want more, and I would want something different. So I'm like, well, I don't want to work with kids. I'll work with adults, and I don't want to work with adults. I'm going to work in healthcare. And that's just kind of how I'm built. Um, and so when I found myself in this unfulfilling relationship and marriage, I ended up splitting up, moving out, getting my own little condo. And then I decided that social work just wasn't feeding me in the way that I had hoped it would. It felt very much draining at the time. And so I quit my job and I sold my house and I sold all my stuff and my car and everything. And I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand. And I was terrified. I had done some international travel before, but not on my own. And I had a backpack and I did all this therapy before I left. And I remember saying like so vividly, I just want to take like the baggage of my backpack and like none of the other stuff with me on this trip. And so I did a lot of like self work and healing before I went on this journey. And I thought, well, I'll just go for, a month or 2 months. And if I freak out and it's too much, then I'll just come back. Or if it works for me, then I'll just continue on. And so I went into a volunteer program and I was working with Buddhist monks in a monastery. It was so cool in Thailand. And then I went and worked in a Muslim school, and I had all these experiences. Anyway, long story short, I traveled by myself with a backpack for 2 years all around the world, totally realizing that that's a life of privilege. But I did for the first 18 months, I only spent $6,000. So I was sleeping in really crappy places. I was eating street food, but I made a commitment to, for one, not get in a relationship with anybody, because I didn't want that to distract me from my travels. And then the other one was, I'm just going to do whatever experiences I can do. So if I want to hop on a camel through the desert, I'm going to do it, which I did. But I'm going to short myself on some comforts. I'm going to short myself on, I'm going to eat street food, and I'm going to take third class trains with all the locals. And it was an experience that was the best experience of my life. And when I went on that trip, I only had me to rely on for 2 years. I didn't have a support system outside of a couple of phone calls and the internet. And I just went wherever I was guided, into whatever country, to whoever I was with, whatever experience. And so after I ran out of money and I felt like I needed to be more responsible, is where I ended up in a little town in Ashland, Oregon. And that's when I met you. And so that was 18 years ago. And at that point, I felt really whole as a human. I was really clear. I was importing all this stuff from overseas, singing bowls and prayer frags and jewelry and things like that, and opened up a little yoga boutique. And I was teaching yoga because I've been teaching yoga for 20 something years. And I really felt like I was standing in who I was. And I was very clear when I met you. And I also, when I met you, was very clear that I wanted somebody that was completely whole and wasn't like a work in progress. um, and or broken, right? I was attracted to brokenness before in my friendships and in relationships. And so that's how I came and I met you. And then I think what happened was we had a beautiful life full of travel and adventure and all kinds of magic. Then, and side note, you're 11 years younger than me. So when I met you, you were quite the baby, but way more mature than me and way more grounded and way more complete, honestly. And so when then we decided that we were going to have kids, and we adopted our little boy Um, we made the decision to adopt at 40, and at 42, our little boy came to us. And I think for the last 10 years, I've been in mom mode. And I have, in a lot of ways, I think this is super common for women, but I think I lost myself along the way. And then my identity just became like wife, mom. And now that our little boy is getting older, I feel like there's some room for freedom in there. But also, a year and a half ago, we were at the hot springs and we ran into somebody and she was talking about ayahuasca. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do it. Sign me up. I'm ready. I want to do ayahuasca. I'm so curious about this. I want to do this. And,
Mm.
um, and I don't know what you were thinking at that time. You're like, what the hell? But that's what started
Mm.
this new chapter for me was ayahuasca. And then when I found ayahuasca, I had been sleeping, and I'm really not sure how long I'd been sleeping, but I feel like it had been a really long time, but I wasn't even aware of it. And the ayahuasca woke me up. It woke me up to the fact that I was sleeping. And
Mm.
then it woke up all of this stuff that I thought had been resolved, that I'd talked through, or I had done talk therapy about, that was not resolved. And so for the last year and a half, I've been diving down. I like to say that I've been like walking through the depths of hell, because that's literally what it's been like. And I feel like every journey that I've had, or every therapeutic session I've had, or every like deep dive into self that I've had has not been easy at all. It hasn't been pretty. It's been messy. It's been ugly. It's been loud. It's been super intense, and it's been really painful, and it's been really beautiful.
Mm.
And with every deep dive into the pain, I'm getting like emotional. Every deep dive into that pain came like profound learning and understanding and depth and clarity of self. Um and that's what gave me the willpower and the determination to continue to go forward, because I got all these teachings and I got all these lessons, and they were so hard. And I think some people have really easy journeys on ayahuasca and plant medicine, and I never have. And they've been super raw and super painful, and they haven't been beautiful and psychedelic. They've been like going into self and exploring really deep, dark pieces and pain. And then every time I've been able to do that and come out of that, it it's helped me grow, and it's helped me grow, and it's helped me expand, and it's helped uh just clear. It's just created like a clarity that I haven't had before. And I feel like I'm so in myself now, and grounded and happy. And I feel like I've been using the word complete, which I've never used. I think I've always felt incomplete, or something was missing, or like, and we're never done with the healing. It's never finished as much as that we'd like to think it is. Um, but it feels like for the first time I feel complete as a human, and I feel
Mm.
genuine happiness and expansiveness in my heart, and my capacity to hold myself and other people. And I think I think that's the key, right? Is like I learned how to hold myself through all of this pain, and support myself, and learn that I can do it. I can get through the other side. I can heal. And so that I had not intended on crying on here, but that just came out.
Mm. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack. You were talking about your journey um, of going down into the depths of soul, and it reminds me of this idea called katabasis, which is basically this process of going down or inward to come through, to come out the other side. Um, and it reminded me of a quote, a Carl Jung quote, and I was looking it up while you were talking because I wanted to share it because it felt very applicable. And this is the quote. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So
Yeah.
I wanted to share that. I feel like very much kind of mirrors the process that you've been going through. And I mean, I see a lot of people in the community that we are now engaged with going through this process of really digging into themselves and really seeing what's under the surface, seeing what's there, finding that truth for themselves, and really uncovering who it is that they are, like what they're meant to be doing. Um, in the beginning of your story, you talked about this time that you were in Southeast Asia traveling, and what strikes me most about that experience that you had was that you were really leading a life led by intuition. Um, and I want to kind of hear you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like, because I feel like in some ways you're kind of living that same, you're living from that same frequency now. You're being led by intuition. Um, and I wonder if you would be willing to explore that with me a little bit, what that feeling was, and if what you're doing now is similar, or if it feels different, or how that past is informing your present.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I went to India and Southeast Asia, I really just started doing what felt right. And so if I was in a place and it felt right, I would stay. And when it felt like it wasn't serving me anymore, I would leave. Or I would go and I'd meet up with other travelers for a while and then I would do my own thing. I hadn't ever spent that much time by myself. Like when you're traveling alone, there's a lot of time to think. There's a lot of nights when you're alone. There's a lot of long 13-hour train rides and things like that. And so I had to really tap into my intuition too about where I felt safe and where I didn't feel safe, and like, oh, that street doesn't feel right. I'm not walking down that street, or this conversation feels good. I'm going to engage with this. And I had such deep experiences. Like I really just went in and dove in with the locals and they befriended me. And so like there was this one chaiwala in India and his name is Naveen, and I met him and I just started hanging out on the street and just talking to him. And then he invited me to his home, and him and his mom and his sister and his father, and they all lived in this like one bedroom hut where the front door was a curtain, this dirty curtain. And they brought me in and they were so kind and warm and welcoming and gave me chai, and they'd have me over for dinner all the time and they dressed me up in saris, and yet there was a complete language barrier because Naveen was the only one that could speak English.
Mm,
And I got to go to weddings and I got to go to funerals and I got to see monks, going into the Buddhist tradition and becoming a monk and having their head shaved. And I got invited into a lot of homes and had a lot of really beautiful experiences. And I was just trusting if it felt right or if it didn't feel right, and where to go and how long to be somewhere. And maybe this country, like now I need to hop over to this country and
mm,
have this experience. And so I think that was my first time being guided completely by intuition. And then this journey has been way different because I didn't know I had intuition. And my intuition is like my superpower. And it started getting reflected back to me by people about my intuition. And then I started playing with it. And so I would have a feeling or have a thought, and I would ask the person, does this land right for you? Is this correct? And it would. And I kept having these experiences over and over again. So I kind of was like testing the waters and playing around. Or even sometimes I would say something and it wouldn't land. And then I'd come back and think, oh my gosh, my intuition's totally wrong. And then they'd come back to me the next day and say, oh, when you said that, it actually did land. Um, and so I started having those experiences over and over
Hmm.
again. And now I've gotten to the point where I would say, I don't want to say 100%, but 99% of the time, I feel like I'm trusting my intuition. I mean, it was just recently where I was talking to a friend, and I was saying, like, I'm feeling almost like daggers from this other woman in the community. And I feel like, and I've never had a conversation with her. But I had this feeling, and it just was not even based in reality. It was just a sense that I was getting. And then I just recently got that confirmed by somebody. And
Mm.
so as I keep having these experiences, I'm learning to trust my intuition more. And I'm learning that when things are in flow, then they're correct. And when they're not in flow, then that's time that I need to change directions. And that's what I've learned from human design is, and it was a hard lesson I had to learn 7,000 times. I bumped into so many walls and doors, but if things aren't flowing, then I need to shift. And so that's helped me to tap in and understand my intuition and trust it.
Yeah, I feel like I have watched you have this process of kind of coming home to yourself again, where you now know how to trust yourself. You know how to be in self. This concept of like, what is my truth? What is my like center? And operating from that space, it's really cool to watch you kind of rediscover that. At least from my perspective, I don't know how it feels for you, but that's the experience that I've been having of you lately, is that you're like found your core, you found your like truth, you found your heart, you found your like source.
I did. And then I think like there, my inner critic is so intense and strong and mean, like really mean. And I feel like finally my inner critic is calming down and
Hmm.
being not so mean and not so noisy. Um, and sometimes we say we're our own worst enemies, and we are. And the way we think about other people or talk about other people or judge other people, like that's just a small reflection of how we're doing that to ourselves. And I was um really hard on myself, and I still am. I am, but I've let that inner critic take a back seat, and that's in the process of guiding myself with this intuition too. And that's been one of the most powerful things. I think there was a lot of self-hatred. It's even hard to say. And like my inner critic was just so mean, and like getting to that point of self-acceptance has been so hard, and but super powerful. And now I just really want to help other people see their light. um we're all light. We all have light. We're all filled with light. And sometimes we get lost, and it's really hard to see our own beauty. And so my hope is that I can begin to reflect that back to other people so that they can see their own light. But it's been hard. And I don't know. I had to go through it the way I went through it. It had to be brutal. It had to be an ass kicking. It had to be the way that it was. I don't learn lessons in the gentle, easy way. Yeah, it was a gift, even though none of it felt like it at the time.
Mm. Wow. There
I'm
are so
like
many things I want to
cried a
touch on.
mess.
You're like, you're crying, I'm crying. This is great. This is my whole game plan. Make Nikki cry.
Oh
Uh,
God, stop.
um, No, I love how open and vulnerable you are. And you're just sharing from your heart. And that's what I'm receiving is this just like real like sense of speaking your truth and sharing that of where you are. And I think that's really powerful. Um, I'm curious how you feel going back into working with people as a social worker in this role of therapist, how it's different this time, or how you are different, what it is you have now to bring to that work. I think you kind of spoke to it a little bit, and we've been talking about this lately as well. I'm also on this path too of going back
Mhm.
to school and working with people in a different way, and so in some ways we're in this very like parallel journey, and it's cool to see who you are now and where you're coming from. But I want you to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think before, when I was a social worker, first of all, I think it's really important to figure out exactly who you want to work with. And
Mm,
so I got really clear this time about who are the people that I want to attract and bring in and work with. And those are people that are ready to deep dive in, that are ready to do what I did, that are ready to walk that really difficult path to get to the other side, and that are like they're ready to go there. They're ready to dive in. And so that's what I'm calling in. And then I think when you go through school, you have all this book knowledge, and I did my Gestalt training, which is like 300 hours, and that was experiential, and that was a lot of therapy. We're doing therapy on each other for 300 hours. And I got a lot out of that, a lot of healing, and I have been to therapists in the past and received healing. I think what's different around this is that I did this healing not with the person that I'm leaning on, but like a whole community. I leaned on a whole community, and my community held me and accepted me. Um I damn it. I feel like I mean, I think that's so important that you, when you're doing this work, that you have a support system that's going to love you and accept you through all the ugly parts that are really
mm,
hard, um, and see that you're doing the work. And so I felt like I was held by a community, not like one therapist, right? And then I also think that there's such depth to the amount of pain that I went through, um, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Friendships have broken, um, you know, and then I mean things have been repaired too, right? And uh, there's nothing that anybody, I really truly believe, like there's nothing that anybody can bring to me in a therapeutic session that I can't hold. Like my capacity to hold everything and anything, no matter how dark and how deep and how ugly, is infinite. And it's because I've been there and I've walked that path, and I've like, there's nothing somebody can show me that I haven't actually probably done myself or seen with somebody else in the community, or
mm.
already held somebody in. And so that's a huge shift. That's a huge shift. It's gone from, I have all these skills, right? The ones that come easy to me, to listen and to be engaged and to get curious and to support. Those are things that we learn in school, but they're innate in us. And I already had that. I could do that with compassion and understanding. But now I have like a level of understanding about what it's like to walk through that in my body, in my soul, in my spirit, in my community, in my, like in every way. And so I'm not afraid, like it's like, bring it on. Like there's nothing that I can't hold for people, and there's no
Um,
judgment. There's none. There's going to be no judgment, because I've done it and I've been there, and it's not pretty, but, and I want to hold people that are ready to do that, because of my capacity to hold them, And because I see what can happen when you walk down that path and how the suffering ends, and we all just want to be happy. We all just want community. We all just want connection, and we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to get there. And so that's a huge shift for me about how I in social work and as a therapist, how I can be there for people in a different way and be truly there.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this real sense of congruence, right, between like being able to walk your talk, being able to lead the way, to show the path, to hold someone through that process because you know what it looks like, you know what it feels like. You've been there yourself, or you can't take anyone where you haven't been yourself. And I think that that's really true on a lot of levels. And to have the empathy that comes with that, it's also what I'm hearing you speak to. Those are really powerful, and I think and sometimes that's most of it, right? Like, yeah, we get these tools, we get these tricks. You're doing EMDR training right now, right? You're getting these other techniques that are going to allow you to work with people in a different way. But really, I think that what I see from you is this like gift of self. I think you have that to offer, and that's more than half of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not anticipate going exactly where we went with this,
Me
but I love
neither.
it. I love it. And I think it's really powerful to share this story, to share this process that you've been through. One of the things that you kind of touched on, and then I think you've talked about in another podcast, maybe about this process that women go through where they lose themselves, and then this process that they have to go through to then kind of reclaim who they are. Um, and I'm wondering if you have things you want to share around that process for yourself and kind of what that felt like. If you even actually were conscious of when it was happening, of this like slow kind of losing of self that happened over the period of wearing the persona of wife, of mother, of
Yeah.
householder, of, home home taker. Like I think a lot of people slip into these roles and they never kind of take a step back or take space to really reevaluate their life. And I see you doing that. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about that, because I imagine there's probably people listening to this who are either in that process actively or maybe are starting for the first time to really look back at who they are and the life they've lived and wondering what else, or
Yeah.
is this really what I want? What's
Yeah.
next?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. One of the things in the EMDR training, they had us write down 10 things that were how we define ourselves. So,
Hmm.
like wife, mom, podcaster, therapist, right? And then we had to have a conversation with somebody and not say those 10 things.
Mm.
And those 10 things are everything, like the things that are important to you. So, family, travel, like whatever it is. And it makes me think that when I lost myself, my labels became really small. Like I had very few labels. I like became mom. That was my primary label. That was the most important thing to me. It still is. It's still a super important thing to me. Um, and I would say mom became the big highlight and everything else just fell off. And so, yeah, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been doing that and consistently and I work out and I'm a wife and all these things. But mom became the headline and there weren't any other headlines. And as I wrote that list, I was like, oh yeah, I am. I am a wife. I am a mom. I am a podcaster. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a therapist. I've served Cambo. Like I'm a community member. Like all these things that now my life feels more full. I'm in more things. It's expanded out of this role of being a mom. And I think that's what happens when you become a mom, working or not. You know, if you're working, then you're a working mom. Because when you get home, then you come back and everything's about this kid. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And so I'm imagine that a lot of women fall into this trap where you're really trying to find balance. And I've always said this since we got married was, trying to balance a marriage and yourself and your career and your partnership, that's some tricky stuff to do for everybody. And so we get so wrapped up in our lives and in our roles that I think we just kind of go on autopilot, especially women, especially moms.
Mm.
And I think maybe we just have to go through that. Maybe we just have to go through that, and our priorities shift for a while. And then at some point, I was starting to get depressed too. I mean, that was coupled with COVID, but
Mhm.
I was wanting more. I was wanting more in my life, but also, what was most important to me was that somebody else wasn't raising our little boy, and that I was doing it in the way that I felt comfortable, that I could live with, that when I look back, like, I feel proud of. And I think it's really tricky to balance all of it until our kids get older. And so maybe that's part of the cycle. And then we can look back at one day, and it's like, are we wanting to do more? Are we wanting to expand? Are we wanting to become more social, or work on our health or our fitness or our relationship? Or because all of those things are important, and if they all crumble, then we crumble with it. And I think it can be a really slow process that we're not aware of. I mean, it happened to you too, I'd say, right? I think and then it's like, how do we wake up? I don't know. Maybe, maybe it's just realizing that we're a little bit asleep, that we're a little on autopilot, that we're a little robotic, that our routines are a little too rigid, or maybe we're not laughing enough, or being creative enough, or being with friends enough, or having joy, right? And I get that sometimes our financial responsibilities take over, and that those choices are privilege, right? Not everyone has that privilege. Um, but I think it's prioritizing ourselves is super important. And the better we are in the world, like, I just think, like, the better my energy is, then the better my interactions are going to be with all the people that I touch, and then with my kid, and then my kid's going to be a better person if I'm a better person. And if we can think of it that way, where we work on ourselves and it has this ripple effect outwards, or are we not? We're like, what is our ripple negative? Are we screaming and yelling at everybody, and we're getting super frustrated, and we're kicking out negativity? And so just kind of taking a look at, like, a real look at, like, where we are could be helpful.
Yeah, when you were talking, there's this quote that came to mind, and it's I think Ram Dass is the one who said this, is that we're here to live this life, so take the curriculum, right? Like, live your life, get lost in the world. That's part of the journey, is to actually get lost in it, and then to look back and come out the other side, and reflect on the experiences you've had, and reflect on the process that you went through in your journey, and all the steps that you took to get to where you are now. I think that's really important. I think it gives you this understanding of what it is to be human, um, that I think is unique to this experience that we're all on, whatever your spiritual beliefs might be. But this is this process of kind of getting lost, getting messy, fucking up. Like, it's all part of it, right? And we can't really fully live our life if we're always trying to stay in this place of non-attachment and non-duality, and we try to live our life from a place of detachment, right? Like, you wouldn't know what it is to be a mother until you just lived mother. You did mother, fully, even
Mhm.
at the expense of yourself, right? But then you have this depth of experience of what that is, that you then can take with you. And so I think everything you said is just really, it's just like, it hits my heart. Um, I'm just kind of wondering what's next for you, like what you're doing, how you're gonna take these experiences and
Yeah.
what you're gonna do with them, and where you're going now. Now you've got this, like, connection to self, right? And this sense of, like, being in flow and living from a place of intuition, where that's leading.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think, I I I put the shingle out that I'm like, I'm back. I'm doing therapy, I'm taking insurance, I'm offering Canva, I'm doing yoga, I've got this podcast, and now it's all coming in really quickly. And there's a lot of abundance. And so I don't know, like if something's going to have to give. I don't know if the podcast will continue. I don't know. I don't know like how this looks. I know I want to help people. I know I want to like touch a lot of lives, and I know that that's important to me, but also I'm not going to let it come to the sacrifice of my own well-being. It's a balance right now. Is I'm juggling a lot. It's super exciting, and I don't know what it looks like. And I feel like things shift so quickly right now, and life changes. And we're going to Peru in June and doing a Cambo Daita for 5 days. And who knows what lesson that frog has to
Mm.
teach me, or maybe the podcast stays, but it totally takes a U-turn and changes directions and goes a different way. But I think it's really important for me to continue to put myself first and to look at how I'm using my energy. I think where do I want to use that energy, and how do I want to direct it, and how much do I want to give each person? And then trying to just remain open to whatever comes. I think there's a lot of people on this path, and things are happening lightning fast. And so it's really hard to predict where we're going to go and what we're going to do.
Beautiful. Any last things you want to leave your listeners or you want to say before we wrap up?
Like, I'm genuinely curious if you're listening to this, if you've gotten this far in the podcast. We'll see who gets all the way to the end. I'm genuinely curious
Mm,
what it is that you're looking for, how the podcast can help you, what kind of content you're interested in, if there's been something that's particularly helpful. My goal is to put out content that inspires people, that's educational, that's a little bit outside the box, that's got depth to it, that can touch people's lives. And so I don't necessarily need to know all the way I'm touching people's lives, but I would like to know, what is it you're interested in? What do you want to see more of? What lights you up? What are you passionate about? What are you getting? What are you not getting? And then, we'll see if this continues. I don't know. Well, I don't know. We'll see. My goal when I did the podcast, I did make a commitment to give it 2 years. I made a very, very hard commitment. I haven't wavered from that. I think we're on like 80 something episodes. So we're getting close to that 2 year mark. I don't know, but I do love it. It feeds me. I love talking to guests. I love getting information. I love learning new things. And so at this point, I just want to know what other people love.
mm. Wrap us up.
Ah, all right. So I guess
Uh,
if people are interested in working with me, they can find me at nickyyoga.com. So that's NICKYYYOGA.com. That'll give people information about how to find me through the therapeutic way. I take insurance or I do private pay. It also has information about Cambo, and I do virtual and in-person yoga classes. But also if people just want to reach out, ask me any questions or connect with me, like feel free. I'm an open book, and I'm here truly to serve. I really just want to serve and be a little bit of a brighter light in this world that has a lot of darkness right now.
shine bright, baby, shine bright.
All
Mm.
right. Do you have anything you want to share?
No, this has been fun. I'm glad we did this.
All right. We'll see. We'll see. If you got to the end of the episode, give us a like, a thumbs up, and a share. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.